Hello and welcome to Console Shock, episode 95, modern and retro gaming chat with me, Trev and Stu. How's it going, Stu?
Yeah, it's going good, Trev. I just want to let you know that you can find us on all of the major social network channels. So we tend to do 1 to 2 episodes a month, and you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, podcasts. We're on Stitcher, and of course we're on YouTube, and we have Facebooks and Twitters as well. So yeah, but other than that, I'm doing well, Trev.
That's good. Everybody could just drop off instantly at the end of the episode now. That was a wait for our probably quite redundant description of every single thing we're on.
Exactly. Let's put it at the beginning.
Yeah, I think it works for everybody. We're not going to listen to any feedback anyway, so you know.
No.
This is what you're getting from now on, guys.
Exactly.
So we're going to look at a subject that, well, we always talk about it, really, don't we? Because that's obviously a big focus of our show with Retro Modern Gaming Chat. Retro being probably, I would say 60% of the time, maybe even 70% of the time, really. It's probably what we tend to focus
I think that's fair enough. Yeah, I've put 60 to 70% is retro.
I would say. And we always talk about and hint at and have little sort of nuggets of discussion about the fact that we collect. I don't think we've gone into a huge amount of detail. I think we have covered it before in terms of it being a broader sub-part of the show. But we thought, we're at a certain point in collecting at the moment. I think it's quite mature. I mean, it probably has been for a few years now. It's obviously not a new thing. YouTube has really been around, which is probably a good reason why collecting is popular, I would say. That's been around now for, over 16 odd years, 17 odd years, I think. So there's been plenty of history now of people showing their pickup videos and their game room tours, and just talking about, Pat the NES Punk is probably a big one, and Metal Jesus, and, basically everybody that showcases collecting in some fashion. But me and Stu do it as well. So what we're going to talk about is how, our experiences of doing it, what we collect, how we collect it, perhaps where we even get our stuff from. Might even, go over some tips and tricks that we do. And just the current state of it, I think. Is it everything too expensive now? Is that just the way things cost? Is it going to get cheaper? Are there consoles that are up and coming that will get expensive? So, go out and get all the games now in CEX when they're cheap. All that kind of sort of nonsense, really. So I guess to start off, I think for me, I don't think there was a point in my life, and this might be different for you, where I sort of said, right, I am going to collect video games. I was probably always a bit of a hoarder with it. And I remember very early that I had a sort of spate of, this is probably my mid sort of teens. I traded away, a couple of consoles to get other consoles. I remember I swapped my NES to get a Mega Drive, and I got rid of my Game Gear to get something else. I can't remember what. And I wanted them back when I was about 15, 16. I remember there was a shop in Clacton-on-Sea called Melodies, which is a bit of a weird shop. It was like, it dealt with vinyl and records and comics and video games. I think it was possibly a front for selling marijuana. It certainly smelt like it. And you don't have to look at the owner. It was like a shaggy-haired kind of dude. But it was great for video games. I remember I managed to do that. Was a good place to swap consoles. And I remember I got a NES back through that with a big pile of games. I can't remember what I exchanged for that. God, it might have been my Game Gear. But I remember I got a Game Gear again a couple of years later as a Christmas present in like 99 or 2000. So I was already this isn't long after these consoles had really died. A matter of a handful of years, really. So I was already kind of getting into that mentality of, I want to play these old things again. I miss them. And I always tried to really not get rid of stuff. I would always try and keep it. And it just kind of piled and piled and piled. And also things like probably the first console that I was really like, I can get all the games now because they're all cheap. It's probably the PlayStation 1. And I built up quite a big PlayStation 1 collection, even in the early 2000s. I'm not talking about hundreds or anything, but I had a few dozen games, and probably the Dreamcast and the PS1, because the Dreamcast was interesting because it died very quickly. And so it was kind of obvious that, this is a cool system to collect for, because it's probably going to become a bit of a unique thing. I was already sort of cognizant of that, in the early 2000s. So again, a lot of places were fire selling a lot of those games. So I remember I picked up like Shenmue 2 in Game Station for like, 20 quid. And that's now 50, 60 quid. So that was another console that, already in the early 2000s, I had a few dozen games. But that's kind of my quick kind of, I kind of warmed up to it, really. I didn't like decide in 2008, I've watched Metal Jesus, I'm going to collect every console now. I kind of just like picked up things and rebought stuff, and it just built up and built up. And and I guess it just made me a collector organically, really. I mean, what about you?
I think very similar, to be honest. I've always been, I've always liked having sort of computer games, but I think when you're young, I want that one, so I'll sell the old one, and I think in reality, sitting here with 2022 Stuart's head on. God, I wish I kept that. I wish I kept that. I wish I kept that. But if I kept all those things, I want to be able to get the other things that I had. That then I also sort of have sold. Sort of further on, sort of down the line. So I tend not to have too much. The only thing I really do regret getting rid of is I've had old sort of PCs and stuff. And I wish I kept those and kept them in sort of good condition and things like that, because they're quite good graphics cards or something like that in. And I just don't know where they went. It doesn't work now. I'll sort of sling it out and get the new computer. And so I was sort of terrible for that. But console wise, I think I built up a bit of a collection. Then I went traveling, so I sold it, and then maybe I sort of donated some of it to the shop when I had that, when we were starting up, potentially. So sort of things like that sort of tend to happen. But over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, I've slowly sort of built up my collection, and and it's really been a case of I don't ever go for full sets, or it's more of actually, I want to play that game, so I'll go and buy sort of that one game, and I'll really sort of enjoy it. I don't enjoy sort of buying big collections of games, or almost I'll try and get every game for something. It's about as and when getting the game and having a reason for sort of playing that. This was the original game that that led to something else, or this was the one where something sort of happened that led to something else, and there'll always have to be some sort of reason sort of behind the game, or this was the last game on the PlayStation 2, this was the last game on the Xbox, a reason, something like that.
I see where you're coming from there, because it's kind of like they're things that have a historic value almost. They're not just like you say, collecting the entire complete collection of systems. You're actually you want to be able to have a little bit of a story behind each one, not overly dramatic, but you're not just picking out shelf fillers. So I need to get. Trying to complete the PS2, entire PS2, so I've got to get all the FIFAs and Dance Revolut DDRs and everything. I never play them. I just need them to complete it. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. Really, I'm not aiming for a full set for anything. Really, I've kind of almost accidentally got almost to that level with the Sega Saturn.
Wow!
I've got over 100 for that, and there's only about 240. So obviously a lot of those are quite expensive. So it would cost a fair bit of money, but that potentially something I could maybe convert into. I've only got to buy a few dozen more things that maybe interest me, and I've already got to the point of being near a complete collection. So that's maybe one that I might even consider doing, but I'm not vigorously trying to do that. It's interesting that you touched upon like regrets in terms of things that you might be wanted to have kept. One that I can certainly definitely say for me that is a bit of a regret, although it was kind of at the same time there's nothing I could have done about it. When I first had a NES, when I was sort of 10, 11 years old, I had like I ended up with a collection of about 8, 9, 10 games. And they were all immaculate. They had all the boxes, the sleeves, the bit of styrofoam, the insert. I sort of babied them. I made, I kept them in good nick. I had like original black box Super Mario Brothers, Kirby's Adventure, Gargoyles Quest 2, which is very, very expensive these days. Zelda 2 Adventure of Link, the gold cartridge. I had them all, like Battletoads and Double Dragon, another very expensive game for the NES now. Some of them I've managed to get back. But yeah, I mean, that I swapped all of that for a Mega Drive with Sonic 1, and that was all I got for all of that. I mean, the NES was like 30 quid at this point in time. You could buy one new for 30 quid. So it wasn't, they were cheap. All of that was fairly cheap, really. Obviously now that's like, what I had then is probably would be worth over $1,000 if they're in that same condition. So that I regret, but it's like you've already touched upon as well. That I had to do that to be able to get something newer and, my eyes better, which was a Mega Drive. So yeah, it was it couldn't be helped really, but I've managed to rebuy a lot of that stuff, and I've got a much bigger NES collection now than I had when I was a little kid. I've got about 60-ish boxed games.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and with another sort of handful of just loose carts. Yeah. So that's probably my biggest regret as a sort of thing to start off with. I mean, you touched upon it a little bit, but is there like a biggest regret that you have? As well?
I think I used to have like an Amiga 1200 with a monitor and an external CD drive, and I had no idea where that went. I must have sold it.
And you haven't got one back, have you yet?
No, I'm almost. They're just sort of so expensive.
Have you nearly pulled the trigger?
In the big scheme of things,
yeah.
If I wanted one, I could afford that. No, well, I don't know if I could afford it.
Yeah,
but it's. I think actually, where will it go? I'll get a nice screen for it as well. And then I've got to
That's the thing, yeah.
Get the WHD load on there, and this. But I don't want one that's already had all these things done. I want to buy one and then do it myself. And then part of me thinks that, actually, I don't know. Will I have forgotten all the things about it on how to do things with it? And so sort of silly things like that sort of put me off. But I would like to get myself sort of a 1200, at some point, and get a few expansions for it, just to, what's it, quality of life improvements,
RAM and
RAM and what's it? Not a solid state, one of those CF cards. In there. I'm not fussed about a GoTech for some reason.
No, I think I've got a GoTech in my Atari ST, but that's because there's not really. I mean, there is a hard drive solution for that, where and people have converted the games, but I've been fine with using a GoTech on that and just having all the disk images and loading the disk images that way. It's very easy that's very, very easy to set up, and the Atari ST is really easy to take apart and put the GoTech in and button up again. Whereas, I mean, obviously you could do that with an Amiga as well, but there was so many like preloaded CF cards you can buy off eBay that you can just drop into your Amiga's hard drive interface, and then if it's a 600 or a 1200, the Amigas that have that hard drive interface. I know there's ways to do it on a 500, but they're a bit more. You to sort of do more workarounds with that sort of thing. But on the 1200, 600, it's very easy, and you can pick up these like fully loaded WHD load CF cards. You just drop them into your Amiga, turn it on, bang. You've got every game that ever came out and everything. And as much as you've sort of said, it's something that you'd like to do yourself, which obviously, I'm sure it's a great to be able to do that. It's very, very tricky getting WHD load. I mean, I'm sure people in the comments might say, "Oh, it's a piece of cake. You just have to, learn how to do it. And you better do it. It's easy. It's easy." Yeah, that's probably true. But I mean, I've done a bit of research into it. Maybe it's easier now. But it is quite complicated. It would probably need a good afternoon
Mm.
you know, to put aside to do it. So it's quite an undertaking. You're not dropping loads of ROMs onto an SD card for an EverDrive and bang, you're done. It's a lot more complicated than that. So to be honest, it's just as easy to buy a card off with everything loaded up.
I think that's the route I would go. So make it a little bit easy, but I'm still doing a little bit of putting it all together myself. And then I love to get one of those old Commodore monitors as well with
the
it.
1084, is it 1084?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I love to get one of those, but then it's like, oh, hold on, where do I put it? And so there's all lots of sort of, I'm putting up lots of walls, lots of objections about getting it. When in reality, maybe I've just got to go and do it and look for a good deal. And I know a few people that will hopefully sort me out sort of a good deal on one. But I mean that's my biggest sort of regret really with that. But more in collecting now is I think what I've always done. I'll buy the odd game where it's quite expensive, but I think what you were saying earlier, Trev, was wasn't it cheap to get the Dreamcast games? Or do you remember when you went to Boot Fair and every PlayStation 2 game was 50p?
Yeah,
and I feel like it's like that now for the 360 and to the same extent the PlayStation 3. And wherever I go, if I see a CX, the first section I go to is probably the 360 section. And I go looking through for sort of unusual games, not your FIFAs or anything like that, or Call of Duty, but you sometimes get, what I get recently, Crash Time 3, which is based on a German.
It's like a car racing,
it's a car racing game, but it's based on like a German cop show.
Oh right, yeah. It's kind of a Burnout Chase HQ thing.
Yeah, so but it's a little bit more story driven, and you've got to do everything quite right, and it's just by no means in the world is that like, oh my god, that's a great game, but it's just an interesting one that really didn't come out, didn't get like a wide release. So it's things like that, and at the moment I'm looking for Wii U games, but it drives me insane for the Wii U, where there's so many. I'm buying sort of the classics and getting them for like £8-9. I'm thinking, oh yeah, brilliant. I'll have this. That's really good. Really happy with that deal. But then there's things like Phineas and Ferb for £200, and and what was it, Zumba you told me about? Oh, that goes for 150. Because it was on, and like what on earth are you buying? What why do you want, why was this Phineas and Ferb game so good that it was a Ben 10 game as well? And it's just like, oh, hold on, it's into the realms of craziness.
I think the most expensive games are like Game and Wario, Project Zero, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD with the figure included.
Those three, you can actually justify them. You can justify them, but there are other ones which are just it's just like shovelware that would just happen to be on the Wii U, just happen to not have very good reviews, so just happen to not release many of them, and then no one bought it. So now it just, I don't know, costs a lot. Another good example of that is actually a game I do want to get for the Wii U is Devil's Third. And I remember that was, at one point, it was really expensive in America. And I was like, oh, it goes for like $9.99 over here. But now it's like 50 quid game or something like that. So it's sort of like a sort of a first or third person shooter. And it's got a lot of slowdown with it. And it's very sort of, even though it's published by Nintendo, it's really not a Nintendo style game, and I don't think you'll ever get a Devil's Third 2 and it was just it would have done much better on the Xbox 360 or the PlayStation 3 or something like that. But actually on the Wii U, it doesn't really sort of sit there as a good game. And I think they knew this, and they only released, I don't know, I'm making up a number here, but like 5,000 of them. But in reality, they probably sold about 5,000 copies, and it was quite a niche game. And but I think at some points it's actually like a slideshow on how you play it. So
like looking at CEX right now and the Wii U games, I mean, yeah, Zumba's one of the most expensive, 75 quid, and like you say, Phineas and Ferb, 120 quid. I mean, I've got about 40-ish, I think, Wii U games.
Oh, really? That's good.
I'm not going for I mean, to be honest, that
don't go for a full set. Do not.
Oh God, no!
It's rubbish.
No, I mean, yeah. That was just from me picking those games up over the last few years. I didn't go on a big, I'm gonna collect them all now, and then I went nuts over the course of a few months buying them all. I was just picking up games here and there, probably when they were about at their cheapest about 3 or 4 years ago, and just kept going. I haven't bought one for a little while, actually, but some of the ones that I do want, there's like Game and Wario's one that I want to get. That's like 60 quid.
That's a good 70, 80 quid, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And even there's some like cross-platform games like Sniper Elite V2. That's like 52 quid, and even sort of slightly crappy cross-platform games like Walking Dead Survival Instinct. That's like 50 quid. That's like a £3 game on like the Xbox.
Get on the Xbox then, Trev.
Yeah.
Get on the Xbox.
Yeah. That's what we should be doing. We should be doing all this silly completionist nonsense and spending too much money on this. But it's but I've done that with other games. Like I've got like the Saturn Resident Evil. It's obviously not as good as the PlayStation. It's still pretty good.
I've got that as well, actually.
Yeah. It's more expensive. The PlayStation version has got multiple even though some of those are actually getting quite expensive, especially there is the whole thing where people don't want the platinum versions of games, which is always a bit funny to me because there's probably less copies of the platinum version for a lot of games because it did most of its sales with the black label the version of the game. So there's probably more copies of that in print. Actually, I think one of the most expensive PS1 games is the platinum re-release of Jedi Power Battles.
Oh, really?
That's very, very expensive if that ever pops up, hundreds of pounds for that. And that's the regular black label release is just a tenner or something, but the platinum is very expensive, as is the platinum FIFA 2005 on the PS1. That might be one of the very, very, very last PS1 re-releases ever, because obviously it was the last game already. The black label one was, and it actually got a platinum re-release probably a year down the line. So that's a real. It does pop up on eBay occasionally though. So yeah, anybody that sees that, you should get it if it's going for cheap. Yeah.
Talking about the Wii U, I'm obviously I'm well into my Wii U collecting at the moment, and I've joined a Facebook group called Wii U. I don't know, Collectors UK or something.
I think I'm in that one as well. Yeah.
And someone, or maybe it was on Reddit, but someone put up a photo, and they had 9 copies of FIFA 13, and each one they had like a different cover. Because in the UK, I think it's countries. Messi, Messi and Ronaldo, not Ronaldo, Rooney.
Yeah.
And then of course they had the Portuguese one, which had a player from Benfica or something, and the German one with a Bayern Munich player, then they're the Australian one, they're the American one, and then the one with just Messi on there, and there's about 9 or 10 different versions. And this guy was, oh yeah, I've got all the versions. Look at me, I'm Billy Big Bollocks. And then people go, oh no, you haven't got the Polish one actually, or you haven't got the there's some other country.
Destroyed that guy's complete world in an
instant. Exactly. So you can just imagine him, searching, the Bolivian eBay to get the Bolivian version of FIFA 13 or something. And I'm like, well, it's the only FIFA game, it's the only football game on there, really. So, go up, get it, but you can buy the PAL version for sort of £3 or £4. So why on earth do you need every different cover variant, and
It's like people
that
that
seemed a
collect
little bit.
club football on like the Xbox and the PS2. When people want to get the Celtic edition, the Rangers edition, the Birmingham City edition,
Oh my
that's a
god!
bit excessive. I mean, it's funny because football games tend to be sort of, all of the the YouTubers that I watch kind of turn their nose up to sports games, but some of the
Yeah.
most rarest games ever are sports games. We've talked loads of times about Lakers v the Celtics on the Mega Drive. The PAL version doesn't really have a price, it's because it's so rare. NBA Elite 11 on the Xbox and the PS3. Again, that doesn't really have a price because it's so rare. And then you get to like often FIFA will be the last game on lots of consoles. And nothing that enters hundreds of pounds, but you'd often find that final release will be worth a lot more than the others, like Pro Evo 2013 on PS2 and FIFA 14 on PS2. I mean, that's probably about 40 quid for each of them. FIFA 14 on PSP, about the same, like 20, 30 quid. Even like Xbox 360, FIFA 19, though it's not the last game. That's still like £40, for
easily.
yeah.
I still want to get that,
I got it when it came out, so I've had it since it came out because I knew it was probably going to be worth a lot, and I like the old 360 sort of era FIFA games. So there's that as well. So, but yeah, I've never been. I find that a little bit over the top, getting every variant. Like my main aim with collecting is just things that interest me. That's not necessarily what I read in a magazine growing up, because that was a very you realize when you watch these YouTubers, particularly Americans, how many series that they absolutely gush over weren't really a thing for us growing up. Like Zelda's a big one. I don't really remember going to my mate's house and saying, let's sit down and play Zelda. I can't imagine anything more boring, really. Saying, I've got the latest Zelda. Let's walk through. Let's walk around for 3 hours
RPGs and stuff.
Yeah, I don't remember anybody being into them. Yeah.
No, I don't either, and it was always again, to go back to sort of these American shows, is there's so many more people had PCs and things like that, and
Amigas, Atari STs, Commodores, Spectrums,
and what was it? Lazy Game Reviews, LGR. Big fan of him. He does amazing stuff. But he also talk about Jazz Jackrabbit, and I didn't know about that game.
And then I'll see him playing the PC versions of a lot of Amiga games that obviously we'd be very fond of. Like, I don't know, or I remember the 8-bit guy saying about how he preferred the PC sound on like Lemmings. I was like, you're a maniac. It sounded
really
utter crap. And I was like, God, they're playing these gimped versions of what were for us quite popular Amiga games. I think we talked about it like ages ago when we mentioned the Amiga documentary. There was a spate of 2 or 3 Amiga documentaries that came up. They're all made by Americans. So it was basically, it was good as the Video Toaster, and it had like some games, but otherwise it was amazing for paint, for art and stuff. And I was just like, they didn't mention any of the game. I mean, if it was over here, well, we don't make documentaries about it here because it was just a mainstream system. There's obviously it's special to all of us, but there's no it wasn't a niche, quirky, like idiosyncratic system. It was just like we played sensible soccer and cannon fodder and all that stuff.
Exactly. And what was it? The 8-bit guy did an unboxing and a review of the A500 Mini. And apparently the A stands for Amiga.
Yeah. What's funny about that? He went through the list of games and he'd played.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You spoiled my. I'll let you say it, Trey. You'll say it better.
I've just said it. He said he literally he did this on the Commodore Mini, I think, as well. The Commodore 64 Mini. He sort of listed all the games and on the Amiga 500 Mini, and he was like, "So I'm only familiar with like maybe 4 of these," and it was like California games. So I never played that on the Amiga. No. I played that on the Master System over here, and just he picked up the randomest games. I mean, I'm not having a go at him. It's just that was his experience. That's how most Americans experienced the Amiga. So yeah, we have a very different view of that. I mean, most of those games I was familiar with and probably played, probably nearly all of them. I don't think it's a
Yeah.
very good selection, particularly, but I know
Um,
it's all they could probably get.
Yeah, it's. I think it is a pretty good. I was okay with it. I mean, like, what's the point? Zool. Oh,
Yeah, I mean the
I
second
can't. I
one's
can't
better.
bother with Zool.
No, it's not a brilliant platformer. There's better ones.
No, it's. I mean, it's. The way people talk about it is, oh, it's just as good as. No, it's not. There's so much better stuff.
Yeah.
For the Amiga, but I thought it was quite a good mix. But the point is, what stands out, and I don't want to make this episode a review of the A500 Mini, because we talked about that before.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
You can put on a USB stick and load WHD load files from that, and there's a certain way round you have to do it. But once you get your head around that, as you were saying earlier, Trev, it is sort of quite easy to do. And so you can really put on any game you want on there.
Yeah, I mean, we could bring it back to the collecting aspect. I mean, it's not really a system that I've delved deeply into collecting, just because, again, that's getting quite expensive as well. The boxes are always very tatty because it's also the games came in cardboard boxes. Similar sort of issues we get with Nintendo systems, and also the discs are probably very, there's a decent chance they might not work at all. So you're basically
100%.
paying for a manual and some cardboard, which plenty of people will do. I've done it to a degree with certain games, but and obviously the consoles themselves are very expensive. But yeah, I think a good point in time at the moment is probably the 360. You can still go into CEX, like my local one here in Woolwich. There's still like about 5 or 6 sort of gondolas worth, or kind of an entire wall still of Xbox 360. It hasn't sort of shrunk down to a little boutique little segment of the store yet. I think, and that's pretty much the same in every one I've been in, and I think it'll be like that for another 5 years at least. There's just so many copies of those games. The PS2 started to shrink a little bit. It's still pretty big though, to be fair. I don't know if they're going to just get annoyed with. Well, I guess now they actively support retro, so they'll just transition these sections into retro. I don't think they'll just get bored and want to get rid of it all in one big go. Yeah,
I think they've got to be a bit pickier with the PlayStation 2, and try and get in the quality and not the quantity of. Again, the old FIFAs and but then some of those more sort of cheap, what those ones that were Blast It or something, that are sometimes actually quite unusual games that only ever came out in sort of a PAL territory, actually quite worth getting. But I think really sort of, I guess, sort of moving on to sort of the prices of retro games, and partly why I like getting the 360, why I like getting sort of the Wii U, the PS3, even to a certain extent the Xbox One, which is obviously not really retro, but is I think they're quite sort of reasonably priced, and I think I'm getting a deal here, and things like that. But on the other hand, the older systems that the SNESes, that the GameCube, the Sega Saturn, the Dreamcast. I think you mentioned it earlier with Shenmue. God, it's like £60, 50, £60 now, and in my mind, I'm like, that's got to come down of actually that's the game I really want to get. That's this, that means something to me. I really want to play that. Then, potentially I would stretch to that, which I have done in the past for sort of plenty of games. But I mean, what's your feeling about some of these?
On the prices,
the pricing really of the the iconic Super Nintendo games or PlayStation 1, and
it's kind of similar to comics, I guess. There's kind of like different like ages that have happened, although comics stretch a lot further back than video games. But weirdly, I would say the expensive kind of eras you could maybe consider it 1 year because it's not a huge amount of time, this sort of period of time. But you're probably looking at kind of the third generation of consoles, all the way up to, I would say, it would probably finish about the GameCube. I mean, the PS2, there's some expensive games, but majority of the library is still relatively cheap, and the same for the Xbox. So, yeah, I mean, oddly, I think the Atari 2600 and Intellivision and Coleco, they aren't too expensive, the games, especially if you're just going to pick them up loose. Even boxed, they're still very cheap. I think the trouble is there's a very small group of people that would collect that sort of first gen of, well, it's actually the second generation of consoles, because before that were the Pong machines, and they've kind of been and gone. Sort of like older Gen Xers who grew up with that stuff before the big explosion of video games becoming a lot more mainstream with the NES. Again, it was different for us in the UK because we had home computers, but consoles generally. And yeah, it is expensive. I mean, I would love to have a bigger NES collection, but I would want to get things really boxed and complete. I don't bother. I'll just grab the loose cart because I know I'll end up wanting the boxed and complete version. So I just go straight to that if I can find it. But you know, and even like huge selling games like Mario 3 and 1, 2, and 3, Zelda, Zelda 2 games that are, aren't rare really in any way. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to find a box copy in good nick, but you're looking at, 60, 70, 80, 90 quid plus, to get these games. And, I'll dabble every now and then. I mean, I kind of caught it at a good time because when CEX started selling retro, I went nuts buying tons of stuff from them when there was just a lot more stuff around. I'm in like a CEX retro. I think we both are CEX retro watch group. And
yeah.
It's kind of funny like being in it because I started buying retro from CEX instantly, and there's still people joining that group now that are like, oh, I didn't even know they did retro. Great, I'm going to go and start buying everything. And at the moment, I feel like we're already at apart from the occasional, gem that someone posts, like a complete in-box copy of whatever game. There's a lot of shrapnel kind of floating around and passed amongst the stores where a collector bought it, didn't like the condition and sent it back. I don't really buy from them anymore, but I went crazy buying from them for about a good 2 or 3 years. And to be honest, a massive portion of my current collection, particularly Mega Drive, NES, and Master System, and SNES, I picked up from CX just when it started doing retro, and there's still a lot of good stuff. But yeah, now it's kind of, I mean, if you bought
they always did retro in the past.
Yes, in the early days.
I remember the Tottenham Court Road. No, the one on near Charlotte Street, just off Oxford Street in central London. Now, when 20 years ago, when I was a student, I went there, and downstairs the way they displayed everything. It was almost like a museum, and it was just like games for consoles I'd never seen before.
Yes,
and it was like, oh wow, what an experience! What an experience it was, sort of going around there, and it was like, and now they're, one cabinet, retro in, and it's like, Mario Kart and Super Mario World and a bit. But
the thing is, in those days,
I think they were almost like they were really big on the import scene, and
I don't think it was necessarily like, oh, we need to keep these. I mean, games weren't old enough for them to be really like, oh, we need to, look after these and curate them. And it was just old stock that they still had, but they made an effort to sort of put it out there because, oh, there's that Super Nintendo game that came out 5 years ago that was really good. People still want to play that and buy it. And then when we started getting 10, 20, 30 years removed from, a lot of that early stuff, that's when they said, look, we've got to just focus on the current stuff. Probably around the 360 era when that began, I think, really, wasn't it? I think GameStation was still focusing on it at that point, but then that would slowly die, wouldn't it, and get absorbed into games?
Yeah, it all sort of went into sort of specialists, and and with CXs, and you see, well, actually, are they focusing on phones? Are they focusing on retro, or are they focusing on old laptops or DVDs and
just tech, really?
I like to sort of analyze, one of those shops and go, well, actually, this one cabinet here, which sells phones, that makes up 50% of the shop's profit.
It probably
Whereas
is. Yeah.
that massive area over there with 360 games will make up 2.3% of the shop's profit.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I bet someone's done that analysis and,
Yeah.
okay, right, well, we dedicated all this space and that's sort of the sad sort of facts of it. And I don't know if that's the case. It might be all the profit comes from the Xbox 360 for all I know, but
Do you
no
buy?
profit.
Did you ever buy retro from CEX like these days?
I do look at it, but I guess it comes back to sort of another point. Really, is with retro, and part of me is comes down to sort of supply and demand, and I think, well, all these retro games are going up and up and in price, and I part of me, I do like to sort of look around, get a good deal for things, but then I don't really buy too much retro from sort of CEX, really.
Is there a particular sort of system at the moment that you're kind of right? I need to get some games for this, or is there one you're sort of looking to get into coming up?
Not maybe the GameCube. Maybe there's still some games on
Yeah.
that. What I wouldn't mind getting a nice little setup for that. Actually, probably the PS2. There's so many good games I want to go back and do, but part of me, I'm more at the moment sort of interested in sort of exploring what's it called, the on disc on where you take out the laser and you put in a card
ODE.
reader. ODE and
yes,
and sort of things like that. And I guess a question for you, Trev, is on the sometimes it sort of seems crazy that someone will spend £80 on a SNES game where you can buy a machine, a handheld machine that'll have every SNES game on, and might not potentially play it just as well as the original, but you can sort of as emulation or as these ODE things. Do you think they've lowered the prices of retro games?
No, I don't.
No,
I mean,
nor do I.
Yeah, that's always the thing that I see every time someone does a review of like the Saturn Satiator, which is an ODE for the Saturn, or the X Station, both of which I've got, and they're friggin' brilliant, by the way. There's always someone in the comments saying, "Oh, this is great! Now we've got that. That means all the prices on the real ones, all the real stuff will go down, and we'll be able to go and build our collections." No, it's not going to affect that, because it's a tangible thing. A game, people want to be able to have the game and put it on their shelf, and that will never be replaced. I mean, I still collect. At the moment, I'm in a bit of a PlayStation 1. Well, I'll say it was the first one that I probably actively thought I want to get loads of PS1 games. It's still one that I collect for. I've got over 300 games.
Oh, wow.
I'm trying to get some of those early Black Label, banner PS3, PS1 games.
You know where you should go, Trev? If you ever go to Herne Bay, you're very close to Canterbury. And there's a game shop called Level Up Games in Canterbury.
Yeah, it was closed. I was there. I was in Canterbury last year on holiday, and we went there, and he closes on during a couple, 3 or 4 times in the week. He's only open like limited. Yeah, I was like, we made a big point of going to it. I was like, oh, there's this retro game shop. So I think I like the page on. Hi, Next Level Games, if you're listening. Thank you for opening a shop in Canterbury.
Level Up Games.
I'm going to try and visit you. I'm not this isn't throwing shade on you, but yeah, it was annoying because I went there and it was closed. And he said, I only open on maybe it's different now, but then it was like it might be the pandemic. We're still kind of in and out of the pandemic then, of course.
Yeah.
But it was like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday, or something. But I'm trying to get those early era. I mean, I've got an X Station, so. For me, that's great, because it means I can just play the ISO files of these games. And for me, like an ODE is quite a magical sort of device, because sort of flash carts and ways of playing hundreds of games, ROMs, for the pre sort of Saturn PlayStation era, pre CD era, they've been around for a long time. Since I think you could, get like on the 90s, you could go to a pirate, shop on holiday somewhere, and you can get 32 in one cartridge. So you could have a cartridge filled with games for a long, long time. But it was always a thing that you'll never be able to do that for those CD consoles. You're always going to need to have a CD. I don't know how you could work out. No one could make an EverDrive for a PlayStation, but now, it's just a case of the way around it is to replace the disk drive. And so that's brilliant. I love that. And those games are obviously really big, file size wise and scope wise. That's kind of the first modern games that were kind of really directly related to what we have now. So I'm collecting those early PS1 games from like 95 and 96 and early 97, those ones before we got the big PlayStation logo along the bottom of the box, and they can be quite expensive. I mean, I got one called Starblade Alpha. That was about 50 quid, which is not super expensive, but it's not cheap either. You had things like even things like FIFA 96, which wasn't produced in huge numbers. The Saturn version is very common, but the PlayStation 1 version is quite rare.
Really?
PGA Tour, PGA Tour 96, some of those early sort of 96 year sports games. Tekken in like the double jewel case, Tekken 2 in the double jewel case, Doom in the double jewel case, Crash Bandicoot in the double jewel case. I mean, these are about 10 years ago, they're probably about $5, and now they're about 20, 30 quid.
Really?
And you've got like, there are ones that aren't necessarily from that era, but Castlevania Symphony of the Night, that's like £300 with like the audio, the music disc that came with it and the map and everything. But that was a game that probably didn't really have huge print runs, because Castlevania wasn't really a big series in the UK.
No,
Again,
Symphony of the Night, even years ago that cost hundreds of pounds. So I can't imagine what it costs now to. Yeah, and even just getting some of the controllers as well. There's one that I want to get, which is the red non-analog PS1 controller, which maybe only came out in America, but I need to get that. Yes, there's the original, the original just controller didn't have the analog sticks. Obviously, the grey one is super common. There's a black one that I got, a white one, and a smoke grey version of that controller, which I didn't even know this till about a year ago or a couple of years ago. I thought they only made the grey one, and then you got the dual shock, and then we started getting some colours. But no, did you ever get the controller? There was a PS1 controller which had the analog sticks on, but didn't have the rumble.
Oh, the dual analog. No, I'm after that as well. Yeah,
because that's slightly larger.
Yes, it's actually
and
a bit more comfortable.
then they're sort of indented rather than I don't know what the white word is.
They're sort of concave instead of convex. The sticks are,
so it's not the actual dual shock. It was, and that's quite hard to find.
And it can be used as a mission stick, because that ginormous 2 joystick doofer that you could also get. It can emulate that, whereas I don't think the DualShock controller can. There's 3 modes on the analog button. The analog button on the regular DualShock that basically turns on the sticks for games that support it. You can sort of press that in twice, and initially it will just be the analog sticks are on. I think if you press it again, it goes into mission stick mode. So certain games that you had those, I can't even remember, maybe Ace Combat did back in the day, like flight simulators and things like that, Warhawk perhaps. But I remember I tried to buy that. It's listed on CEX. They've got a listing for the dual analog. So I bought it, and I knew I'm going to get sent a dual shock. The people that are in these stores won't have a clue what to do, because I'm not really slagging them off. You would need to know your stuff about PlayStation 1. If you're just a 20-something, it just works in the store. You weren't even born probably, which makes me feel pretty old.
All you can do, you've got to buy it off a listing off eBay with a photo.
Yes.
Or some sort of dedicated PlayStation forum. Or actually see it in a shop and go, I want that one.
Yes.
That's the only way you could buy it.
It's funny about the controllers, because even the PS3, getting all of the various dual shocks, I've got quite a lot of them now, but I'm missing a handful. I'm missing the candy blue one. Some of them only came out in Japan. There's a clear crystal one, which in
Oh,
my
wow.
mind was like, oh, that's got to be super common because everyone like just the plain white crystal controller, like everyone's done that controller, you know. But no, that's really rare. That's like goes for over £100. That loose, just for a loose one. So that I'm after. But yeah, it's a pretty cool console to collect for. I mean, I've even got a developer PS1, the blue ones. Unfortunately, the laser's gone in it. I need to get it fixed. But yeah, I've got the shell at least that was fine, and the motherboard, so I could probably get it fixed quite easily. So I've got that. So yeah, I do like. I've got all the issues of, or at least most of the issues of official UK PS1 mag. I mean, issue 1 of that goes for, I think I saw one go for about 70-80 quid.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say I want to get some of the old Meme Machines magazines because they're the ones I used to love reading.
Yes.
As a kid, that was such a sort of good magazine, and I always felt like I had a bit of attitude to it. I always felt like, oh, I'm really cool reading this, but in reality, I probably wasn't. But
in reality, you had a copy of CU Amiga inside that when you're on the bus. So it's like a cool,
exactly. I was
magazine.
reading about programming or something
Yeah.
and not understanding it.
How to get your how to format your documents in Wordsworth on the Amiga.
Oh,
Yeah.
talking about programming now, another thing that's sort of coming more prevalent. I guess sort of two final things really is one is like the Mister, the sort of FPGA, and I went round to a friend's house and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do really perfect PlayStation 1 emulation," and that's always been something I found that these Mister things. Oh, they do arcade, they do Super
Computers
Nintendo, they
yeah.
do this, they do that.
Yeah.
But anything PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, they're not really great at. But now it seems like actually they are. So I guess the same question is, do you think that the FPGAs will provide another sort of outlet for people to, instead of buying the console, instead of
I think they're a bit too technical. They seem a bit complex.
I 100% agree with you that it seems like you have to really play with the settings, and then you might get the game working, but then the buttons are all in the wrong place.
Yeah, they don't appeal to me at all. I mean,
No.
in my favorite systems, like my top 3, PS1's my favorite console, Commodore Amiga's my favorite of all time out of all of them. And then probably it's, we had our top 3s episode. So, I had what I think it was basically those two at the top. And I think 3 was probably the Dreamcast or something. But I've got those original machines that have been modded with ODEs. So if I want to play them, I mean, I don't have the setup I had a couple of years ago when I had everything set up simultaneously. Now I just dig out what I feel I want to play, and I'll play that particular system, which is fine. I mean, at the moment, my PS1 with the ODE in it has kind of stayed in place because I'm really into my shooters at the moment, my shmups.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, no one really ever talks about the PS1, but it's for this. But it's really, really good for shmups. I've been playing a lot of them didn't get over to us in Japan. A lot of them, there's Gradius Deluxe Pack, which is Gradius 1 and 2 on the PS1 arcade perfect versions of those games. There's the Salamander Deluxe Pack, which is Salamander 1, 2, and Life Force, Gradius, Gaiden, all the Parodius. All the Konami shooters, Raiden, it's got friggin' tons of them.
Isn't it Raiden?
Right. Is it Ray Iden?
I don't know. I was being
Raiden.
Yeah.
Raiden. But yes, it's great for shooters. So that's kind of been like a permanent fixture. And to be honest, I kind of bounce around that, the Saturn, the Dreamcast, and probably the PC Engine.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I haven't played my Mega Drive for a while, but because it's a bit more of an effort to sort of, to play a particular console, I sort of have to really, really get the craving for it. And the PS1, I kind of think it covers so much. I kind of haven't really wanted to put anything else in. But yeah, there's no real appeal to me over. I mean, I've got emulators I've got RetroArch on my PC. So if I really just want to kick back and bounce between 8 different consoles in an evening, without having to get equipment out. I can just jump on that. Okay, there's some little bits, a bit of jankiness with the controller a little bit. I might have to remap certain things, but I can do that. Okay, it's not a cycle accurate or whatever, exact recreation of the CPU and processors of the original. It's software trying to do that. So, there is an argument that it's not perfect. But if I want that, I'll just get the actual console. I've got most of them, so if not all of them, over the years. So yeah, for like I've seen people selling them on eBay. I think they're not cheap either. I think they're like couple hundred quid. I mean, you can get
the Misters.
Yeah.
I think
they're more, aren't they?
I think they're sort of 300-400, and then you need to buy the board from Intel, and then combine it all together.
But the
board from Intel is, I think that's out of stock for another 18 months or something.
Yeah,
it's everyone wants it, and they don't really see the point of. Anyway, I'm sort of.
But it's complicated and expensive.
It's complicated, but I think that the whole point is that people who want to collect, that's what's driving up the pricing. It's not the people who actually are, want to play the games. So I think there are some people that go, actually, I just want to have an FPGA or or my emulator machine and actually sort of play the games that way, or ODEs and things like that.
Yeah.
That's what they're fussed about. There are other people who want to have walls and walls of games all lined up, and I've got I've got the instruction book for this now. I've completed that one, and so you get collectors, and on the other hand, you get people that actually I want to play that, but or the wife or the girlfriend, or I haven't got the money to, and that's the point, is that a lot of these games, there are I don't know, hundreds of games or thousands of games that cost over £100 each, and that's even if you can get them.
I think we're quite similar. I think we're kind of a mixture of all of those kinds of people. We use emulators, and we have the real hardware, and we get just an urge to play on the real hardware because you get that tactile feel of playing the original console that's priceless. And we collect the physical games as well. I mean, sometimes I'll play a game on the ODE on like the PlayStation or the Dreamcast or an EverDrive, and I'll be like, God, this game's really good. You know what? I wouldn't mind having a physical copy of this. And I'll look it up, and if it's reasonably priced and within my sort of, what I'm willing to pay, I'll probably get it. So yeah, I buy the games that interest me, and they go in my collection. That can still amount to a large collection, and it has, alongside the games that I remember reading about in magazines that I wanted, and I can finally buy them. I mean, that leads me to probably the final thing we'll talk about before we jump off for today's show, and that's like the thing I always hear. Are we in a retro gaming bubble, like price bubble or collecting bubble, where everything's shooting up and then it'll explode and it'll go super cheap, basically?
No.
I agree.
I don't. I think people have said that for years, and the whole idea is that I don't think it'll be a bubble, because these things are, they're only getting. There's not an infinite source of them. So there's only a finite source. I think that's the right word. So at the moment is, the more people talk about, Chrono Trigger on the Super Nintendo, it's one of the best RPGs, the characters are amazing, then people go, actually, I want to get that. And there's only so many sort of copies of that game going around, and every time one is bought or sold, it will get damaged a bit more, or it might just stay in someone's collection and stay there. So I think as a rule of sort of supply and demand, it will, it will just not ever really sort of burst. That's my opinion. I don't know what you think, Trev.
No, I agree. I think it will.
No, Trev, you've got to have a different opinion to me.
I would love to. But many things we do. But
Yeah,
no, you're right. You're right.
yeah,
I think as long as people that are interested in that particular generation of games are alive, they're always going to be fighting over the copies that are left, and that will drive
yeah,
up the prices. And I don't think for as long as our generation is alive, I think our generation will be the biggest, and probably like the Gen Xers, the Zennials, the Millennials. We're probably the biggest consumers of, probably the golden age of video games, and maybe you could probably expand that to like the Silver Ages and the Bronze Ages. So yeah, that NES too, and we could probably cobble in like Amiga into that as well, and PC DOS, that all the way up to PS2, GameCube, Xbox. We are going to be the biggest like people fighting over those games, and as long as we're still around for hopefully many decades to come, there'll always be demand. But there will still be people that are younger than us, people that are interested in the history of this stuff, that want to have the original games of. I mean, Mario's still going. Mario will be like Mickey Mouse; he'll go on for decades. And people will be like Steamboat Willie is from the Mickey Mouse. Super Mario Brothers 1 on the NES is like the Steamboat Willie of Mario, and like the original black box copies of that will be sought after, and they'll just get more scarce and more scarce, and ultimately they'll stay in the possession of collectors, who won't want to sell them for cheap. So yeah, I don't think it's going to go away. And to be honest, they're the kids growing up now. Maybe 360 was their first console. God, I was reading an article today on Nintendo Life about the 3DS turning 11 years old.
Oh,
and
wow.
God, the comments. It was like, oh, I got this. This was my first ever console when I turned 10. I was like, Christ, I was like 28 when that came out. So yeah.
It's almost like part of me worry. Not, I don't worry about this. That's a lie.
Yeah.
I don't worry about it. But you imagine sort of kids growing up and going, oh, do you remember? Oh, all our mates, we used to go around, we used to play Fortnite. Oh, we have so many great memories. Oh, let's meet up and go and play Fortnite. This is 20 years in the future.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Fortnite's that's turned off. It's not on anymore.
Yeah.
You can't play it anymore because you can't do it. You can't play that. You can't have that experience again. It's done.
Someone would have to make an indie developer would have to make. Oh, so we like at the moment everything is a bloody Metroidvania or 8-bit pixel art. RPG,
2D
for like millennials.
Let's make a retro style 2D game again.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a big boom of it. People of our generation like that stuff. But in 20 years, there'll be indie developers will be making Fortnite alikes with like cool, zany looking DreamWorks expression characters. And that'll appeal to like Gen Z, who would be in their 30s and 40s. And they'd be like, oh, I can play that game with all my mates I used to play. And they'll be a bit weak. So be like, oh, what are those things we used to love? Yeah, transactions. I used to love them. They're gone now. But when I was growing up, I used to love playing Horse Armor.
I remember that time I stole my mum's card and bought a yellow gun.
50
it was brilliant.
Packs. Yeah.
Oh, great memories. I loved it. I had all the yellow guns.
Yeah. I mean,
and I run around with a silly hat on.
But that's what's probably just going to happen. I mean, I guess the physical copies of those games will be, sought after, but they'll be fairly useless. It's interesting because John Lineman actually made a really interesting comment where someone was on Twitter. There was a debate going on about. Someone said, "Oh yeah, as much as it's people are saying, oh, collect those PS4 and Xbox One games now because soon there'll be everything will be digital." And then someone said, "Oh yeah, but they'll be useless because the disc won't have the day one patch, so the game will not be playable, and you won't be able to. Maybe you'll get through the first few worlds, but after that, it will get broken at some point."
Well, look at Gran Turismo 7.
Well, there you go. But John Lineman sort of was really adamant, and he said, like, no, I guarantee you, like any game that came out, it's fully playable. The whole game is there. And I was like, but even without the patches, and I was like, can you be sure of that though?
No.
So I'm not sure. He was very. I mean, I love John. We love you, dude. You're wicked. Keep making those amazing stuff. But that was, I can't imagine that's the case.
Well, I think I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but
yeah,
when you put in a Call of Duty game, on the Xbox or something. It's you pop it in, and then there'd be a 40 gig install, and then
Yeah.
a 60 gig download.
Yeah.
So what you download in that 60 gig, so I think they'll.
What about the Xbox 360 versions of like Black Ops 3, which is
Yeah.
multiplayer only? You can get to the menu and you can look at the menu options, but you won't be able to start a game.
Well, yeah, exactly, and it's actually quite sad, really, that there'll always be obviously there'll always be games for people to play, but it goes back to the sort of analogy I use every time. It's like, what if sort of films, if you want to get an old film, you can stream it, you can get it on DVD, you can buy it on Blu-ray, you can buy all different methods, and then I think people will still be selling DVD or Blu-ray players, for sort of years to come. And as long as you've got the disc, you can watch the film. You're not ever going to have a situation where, oh, here's the disc, oh, but if you want to, it's got to be connected to the internet, or it's got to do this, it's got to do that. And if I want to watch Gone with the Wind, that was filmed in 1945 or whenever it was, I can go and watch that. There's no sort of barrier to entry, but it still annoys me how there, with video games there are these huge sort of barriers to entry for people who want to experience sort of these sort of classic situations. And in 20 years' time, if someone wants to play Gran Turismo 7, could you 100% say that they can play the full experience of Gran Turismo 7 in 20 years' time?
Exactly. It's pretty grim.
You could do. It might work. It might not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All you could hope for is, people that these days are trying to get Xbox Live on the OG Xbox going. They've got special servers you can connect to. I mean, that will help to a degree.
That's a barrier to entry.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
you have to know how to set that up. If someone's going to get it and get the machine and put the disc in, and then obviously you're not going to have the online battling people and things like that. But if you want that, no one's going to. I've got to connect to a proxy server and do this and link it up with that and. Join a Discord with people, and they'll give me an invite, and then we meet every week at 3:00 in the morning on a Tuesday night, and then we play the game. That's difficult to do. Well,
there's only a subset of people that will ever have that, dedication to want to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that grim note, I guess we'll finish for today's episode.
The world is doomed, Trev.
Collecting from this point on, collecting is pointless. I think is basically
no. You've got to collect everything.
Even if it's just a disc that's with no without the patches.
Collect.
Yeah, it's still a box and a disc with a nice label at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's what you want.
So yeah.
Disc.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Goodbye.
See you guys. Take it easy. Bye bye.